everyone, how are you? I have the video this week, and this week we are having a look at some more Alasdair Gray, which is why I'm wearing my Argyle jumper, because we're spending some time with the Scots again. But before we start with that, remember there is our shop where there are books, there are writing services, all sorts of things to help with your writing. New book coming out this month, so look out for that. And loads of fun things there. There's also a Redbubble shop where you can choose something from over 100 designs. So if you want to support us, that's how you support us. If you want to support us without spending any money, like, subscribe, share, comment. Love it when people comment. So that's how you support us. Okay. So this week we're having a look at Alasdair Gray again. That's why Scottish jumper. So I really like Alasdair Gray. I think he's really interesting, and I want to move into magical realism soon. But I wanted to because I read these books while I was waiting for Poor Things, and I wanted to get these talked about before I forget them. You know how it is when you're reading a lot of books. So what are we having a look at? We're having a look at two very short novels by Alasdair Gray. And they're very short novels with a very Scottish theme. Surprise, surprise, is Alasdair Gray. But they're companion novels, and they're novels about power. In fact, they're barely novels. They're like tiny little things. They're really novellas. We're having a look at The Fall of Kelvin Walker and McGrotty and Ludmilla. Both of these very short works, they are companion pieces, and they're both looking at the nature of power and Scotland's position within the Union, that is the UK. They're really interesting. Alasdair Gray talks a lot about this. He was a very political person. Now, both of these books, this one actually started out in the 60s. It wasn't actually written up until later. This one also was written in the idea was around in the 70s. I don't think he published it till the 80s. But they're both examining power. I'll start with this one. The Fall of Kelvin Walker. Kelvin Walker is a young man who has come down from London from his Scottish town, where he is the son of a preacher with a bunch of older brothers, and he has recently discovered Nietzsche. Giant red flag for anybody doing anything is any young man who's discovered Nietzsche. But he's decided that he's going to go to the seat of power, London, and he is going to rise to the very top he's going to make himself a man. And he has all the money in the world that he owns, and he manages to fluke his way into, after going to job interviews for CEO positions or board member positions in big companies, he finally manages to fluke his way into a job with the man whose name he has been usurping on the television. And he also meets a pair of London bohemians. They are a young man and woman who are in a volatile relationship. And over the course of the story, Kelvin and the girl manage to hook up. And it all comes crumbling down because it is the fall of Kelvin Walker. That's the setup for this one. This one is McGrotty is a low-level civil servant. He's actually a fairly medium-level civil servant. Think of like Bernard in Yes Minister. In fact, Alasdair Gray said, "It looks like I stole Yes Minister, but I had the idea, this book actually occurred well before Yes Minister was written." But McGrotty is a civil servant who people find so unpleasant that they just keep promoting him to get him out of their offices. He is in his mid-30s, early 40s. He has no real family to speak of. He has an elderly mother. But he has no life. He keeps moving around because he keeps getting moved from office to office. And he has now found himself in Whitehall. And in Whitehall, he comes into possession of a report. This report could destroy everything. He also comes under the influence of another man who is like a Sir Humphrey, a secretary, who wants to use this report to further his own ends. Ludmilla is the minister's daughter. And once McGrotty gets a hold of the report, he's able to blackmail his way into quite a good position for himself until consequences ensue. This one is a retelling of Aladdin and the Lamp. So all the elements are there. McGrotty is the Aladdin, Ludmilla is the Sultan's daughter. The Sultan is obviously the minister, and the nefarious magician who wants the lamp is the secretary. Is actually, when you know it's played off Aladdin, it really makes sense. Like, he really has matched it very, very well. But what do these two books have in common? They have in common Scots who go to the big smoke, who go to the seat of power, who go to London, and find themselves shut out from the general organs of power. Now, why is Alasdair Gray interested in this? Why is he scathing about this? Well, you have to understand why he has this attitude. You have to do a little bit of history. So, Scotland and England obviously became tied much more closely to one another politically when the Stuart kings inherited the English throne from Elizabeth I. So that's James Stuart, Charles I, who lost his head, Charlie II, James II, and Queen Anne, the Stuart kings and queens. Now, the Stuart kings and queens were somewhat notoriously bad at managing to hold on to the throne, though historically I think we're just so used to having the Windsor, Saxe, Coburg, Habsburgs on the throne for the past 200-300 years that we actually don't realise how unstable monarchies historically have been, how volatile it has been to maintain control of one family. Mostly, I think the reason we have 300 years of one family is because they effectively neutered them. So Parliament neutered them, but when the king or queen actually had some level of power over Parliament, they seem to have had a tendency to make a bit of a pig's breakfast of the whole deal. And the Stuarts especially did that. But, not to single out the Stuarts, but under the Stuart kings, actually it wasn't under the Stuart kings, it was under the last Stuart queen, Queen Anne, in 1707, Parliament passed the Act of Union, which united Scotland to England as part of the United Kingdom. Now, this is really important because Scotland was not colonised in the same way that Ireland and Wales were. Scotland was joined by an Act of Parliament as what clearly Scots thought was an equal partnership. Of course, when have the English ever done that? And then, obviously, by this point, Scotland is starting to wonder what they got out of that deal. So you have, and getting out of it, are you kidding? The English don't give anything back, not even human remains. They really should give back. The Scots obviously saw themselves as an equal member, not a colonised member of the English, but as an equal member with the English. And this has led to the tensions that you see in Alasdair Gray's writing. Now, both Kelvin Walker and McGrotty and Ludmilla have a Scottish sensibility coming up short against an English sensibility. The English set the rules and the English play the game. Kelvin Walker finds himself basically used, abused, and then dumped. The power that he thinks he has is only at the discretion of the English people who run things. This one is about the media and the extent of power that the media has of shaping things and also of pulling things down. Kelvin Walker never really manages to get a proper handle on this. He thinks he has a handle on it. People allow him to think he has a handle of it. But once he gets too much power, once he gets out of the control of his handlers at the current affairs program he's working on, they ruin him. They ruin him. He does have power later on, but the power later on is confined to Scotland. He is actually like, here is your place. You are not allowed to have the power down south. You have to remain up north. So he uses his time that he learnt of media in the south to become very successful in the north, but he's never able to go back down south because he dared to usurp that power, that asymmetric power that is in play between Scotland and England. In McGrotty and Ludmilla. Now remember, in the story of Aladdin eventually becomes Sultan, the street urchin, the thief who steals the lamp, eventually becomes Sultan, marrying the Sultan's daughter and becomes Sultan. In this one, McGrotty does eventually, in the end, become Prime Minister. But what is Alasdair Gray saying about becoming Scott being Prime Minister? It is as that it is as unbelievable as a street urchin becoming Sultan. It is that difficult. McGrotty doesn't become Prime Minister because he's in the position. He has to blackmail his way into this, basically. He essentially blackmails his way into it. Is he a bad person for stepping over these people, or is he using the system that has been designed, a system that has been designed deliberately to make sure that power is kept down south? Now, just to give you an example of how power has been kept down south, in spite of the fact that Scotland and England are supposedly have a union, out of the 57 prime ministers of the UK, 57, 7 of whom have been Scottish. 7 out of 57. So Scotland, basically Alasdair Gray is saying we got the short end of the stick because a union that was created when there was a Scottish monarch a Stuart on the throne, which seemed fine, turns out to be not so fine when the Stuarts are no longer on the throne and they have brought in Germans who really don't have any sense of this as a partnership. It's like, oh, okay, this is ours now. So much so that even the Stuarts can't even get their own throne back when they want to, because they've now been bound to it, and the English don't give things back. So these are complaints about power. Both of these were written before Scottish rule was earned, given, taken, I think is probably best. But before Scotland had self-rule, which it does now, although it is still part of the UK, and the referendum before Brexit went down against Scotland regaining its independence. So that's what these are about. Just as Poor Things was very much about Scotland's complicity in the colonial project of Britain, of England's colonial project, and Alasdair Gray is saying, well, we were complicit in this, we were benefiting from this, we cannot wash our hands of this colonial project. These books are Alasdair Gray talking about the uneven distribution of power. We are not a colonized country, Scotland is saying, and yet this union that was supposed to be a union of equals has us well and truly in a subordinate role. So this is just a short little video, but they're short little books. They're really, really fun. Read them together. The more Alasdair Gray you read, the more you realise what an absolute rabid Scots nationalist he was. So, obviously, Argyle for that. But, I would highly, highly recommend these. I will be bringing more Alasdair Gray as I read them. I have a lot of collections of his short fiction, some of his other novels. But before I do that, I want to get started with magical realism. So that's what I'll be bringing you next time, is an introduction to the magical realist genre, and we will spend some time in South America. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you look forward to our tour of magical realism, which I've already been scathing about the fact that it's not a genre of fantasy. We'll have a look at what it really is. And until then, peace and love, guys. Peace and love. If you would like to support this channel, come across to the Black Cockie Press website, www.blackcockiepress.com.au, where you will find books and other writing services to help with your writing.